Well, it seems just like a few seconds ago I was finishing up part 1 of this video. That's because that's true. Now I have plenty to edit there. So this will be part 2. We will continue on our subfloor preparation work. We're going to finish cutting out the rest of these stringer guides, getting that all ready for some new stringers. Then we'll start cutting the Coosa. So here comes some time lapse. Our sanding and prep have made it far enough that I think we can start to cut out some Coosa and build new pieces for this old boat. Get a halfway good look at that there. I want to show you some more cool stuff here I've got. Okay, should be no mystery that Coosa is not cheap. We want to get the absolute most out of it we can. So I made a diagram that is a 4x8 sheet of Coosa. The 3/4 inch thickness is what I went with. And these are my pieces. This is going to be shaped like the transom. Transom piece 1, transom piece 2, sandwich those together. They'll be 1.5 inches thick. And then these are some stringers. These are the transom knees that go, like if this is the transom, they go like this to help support the load of the outboard. And then in our second of 3 sheets, and I made all these drawings and measurements up before I even cut the boat apart. So these are rough measurements that are going to be quadruple checked before anything's cut. So I estimated 41 inches wide for my floor panel, which this will obviously come to a point in the front because that's the shape of the boat. I left some room over here for some additional stringers if we want to sandwich them together or just make sure we have enough, and any other way of looking at it. This one got a little scrambly and I changed some stuff, so this is more or less for my own purpose because I know what it means. This is gonna be our front piece of the floor because this boat's long enough that the 8-foot sheets won't cover it lengthwise. We'll have to put some stuff together. So we should have enough for two 4-inch wide stringers here if we need them. We have our front little nose piece here. Our foot, I call it a footboard. The place where you put your feet, you could also call it a bulkhead, I guess, above the floor bulkhead. I'm sure it works as both. You need as much support as you can have anywhere and everywhere you can have it. So these are old scratched out drawings, and then these are the new unscratched out drawings, as you can clearly tell because this is not madness whatsoever. These will be the side panels of the boat that you see back there. The vertical panel that goes right behind the cap and encapsulates the foam back there, which I believe is engineered for, when we all can pretty well assume. I mean, there's actually old advertisements for these old boats. That was designed to, I believe, be the right amount of foam in the right places to keep this boat afloat if you just pull the drain plug. But I also believe that it structurally kind of triangulates this boat a little bit. It makes it where it's not just a big flimsy piece of fiberglass. So we definitely want to go back with expandable foam and get this thing structural, as well as to have it float. I mean, we sure hope it doesn't ever get a hole punched in it or get stolen or whatever and ruined, but I think it'll also just make it a structurally more sound boat. So let's move on to our next little step here. I like to save as many pieces as I can off the old boat that can help me as reference material for the new parts. My old transom, double thickness here, this was, I mean, yeah, it's not in perfect shape, but it's solid and it's the right shape, as you can see. So we're going to use this as a template to trace and cut out our Coosa to make our new transom piece. This is that footboard bulkhead thing. It would have had a split. Let's get where you can see it. Stand back a little. It had a split in the middle, something like that. And I'm going to put this back up on the boat where it came out. You can kind of see that up there. And I'll probably stick a board in between it when it's mocked up in the right spot on the boat. And screw those, all three of those pieces together. And then I can use this as a template for that bulkhead foot piece. And then I can trace that out of the Coosa. And then here we've got some more of our pieces from our transom knees. I want to say these were roughly the full structure. I could get away with 1 foot high by 2 foot lengthwise in the boat. And I've been pretty slow at getting started on this, and you might be the same way. You see, Coosa is not super cheap and not super easy to get. I actually went in with a friend who I know is going to redo his boat soon, and we ordered all of ours at the same time because the shipping is not cheap. Which, I mean, think about it. If you had to carry sheets of Coosa across the United States, it would cost you money. You have to pay. You have to pay for that. So here is my Coosa, and I'm tired of it just taking up this space in my shop. I want to get that floor space back, and I do want to get my boat back together. So, ooh, there's an attack dog next door. Okay. So let's get this out, and let's get to cutting, and let's make some boat pieces, and not just have these big expensive rectangles and taking up space here in the shop. We have our Milwaukee saw here. We love that. We're very dependent on our Milwaukee tools. They don't sponsor us. They'd be a lot cooler if they did, but we still love to use their tools. And I'll tell you that I think we're going to end up needing roughly 11 feet long on our center stringer. And I came up with needing it to be 5 1/4 inches tall. And that would leave me the appropriate amount of tiny bit of space between the floor panel and the stringer for the fiberglass that I'm going to, like for the 1708 cloth, to lay over the top of that and attach stringer to floor. And then, man, I'll tell you this too. If I had the kind of help that would be handy right now, I would love to use my table saw to cut this to get a perfectly straight line, but I think I'm just going to have to use my steady hand and use this little circular saw here reluctantly to make this a straight line operation. And I need a pencil. Kazow, pencil. Pencil, tape measure, gloves. Gloves. I think it takes longer to get all the stuff together and get set up to work than it does to actually work on these projects. But I guess that's part of the project too. So let's take this. Let's go 5 1/4. With as much self-confidence as I can possibly show, that I'm not afraid to cut into my new boards and maybe get some of this wrong. You got to start working. You can't just sit and think and worry about it too long. 5 1/4 and 5 1/4, which I originally estimated the center stringer, I believe, to be 6 inches tall. So 5 1/4 leaves me a little bit more material for more stringers, taller stringers, other parts altogether. So not a bad deal. I'm going to use this as my straight line. My circular saw generally seems to erase this line right before it gets to it. But what are you going to do? I think I've cut some pretty good lines before. Am I in the right spot still? It better be. Yeah. The gloves are making this harder than they are easier. I always do this. I always do it on both ends. You gotta be thorough. That way you get plenty of the blue dust all over your project too. Tell you what, you pop that line and it just like, you can tell that it's off the string from that point. Okay. That's our 5 1/4 piece. Stringer number 1. Let's get to cutting this out. See how dusty it is. If I have to stop immediately and put glasses on or change my mask or whatever, I guess we'll just have to find out. That's gross. What is that? Mask clean, check. Installing mask. Okay. Let's double check our blade placement. Double checking blade placement. Yep, looks like it's right where it needs to be. Looks like I need to be just right through my line. Five and a quarter. 5 1/4. Let's start test fitting everything we can, one piece at a time. Here's our first piece. This boat has been apart longer than I've really wanted it to be, and it's already a little bit misshapen down here. I'm going to probably need to pull more out of this groove. I might have even could have cut this a full 1/4 inch less. Maybe done 5 inches, because I'm going to bed these in so they will be glued down well. And that might automatically, see now I finally have a straight edge along the bottom of the boat to really look at. If I move around in the boat, I'm not getting much of a deviation from the bottom. But I can tell you that I don't like how tall, wait a minute. How tall this fits in here. But that being said, this was my reference. Went from the base of where the floor panel would be to the base of where the floor panel would be. And I'm tall, and I'm probably tall by about a 1/4 inch, which isn't ideal. It needs to be probably, 1/4 inch shallower than that. So like I said about bedding, if I need to modify the floor any, I can. Look like a real expert today, don't I? Of course, I never exactly claimed to be. But I could just as easily rip another little row off of this board. It's not like I made it too small. I made it too big. So I might be shortening this thing out by a little bit, which would allow room for the bedding. Maybe make that 5 inches instead of 5 1/4. I do want to get this back in the groove though before I go to getting any finite measurements here. You know, just I'm always terrified of making things too small because you can't exactly make them bigger once you've done that, but you can always make them smaller. You don't want to waste any material. I was trying not to waste anything. Sometimes you just do. But yeah, I could take another 1/4 inch off of that, which I believe I will. My cross measurements here. Okay, that'll end up being probably 5. I'm going to go ahead and break out a tape measure. Double check all this. I'm going to go ahead and just estimate, because I like to guess, that we know that from here to here is half the length of this level here. That if this is sitting on the surface it needs to be sitting on, which it is, and this is sitting on this surface, if this measures from the base of where the floor panel is going to be to the base, to the bottom line on this level, it's 1/2 inch. I'd say if we did the old 2 to 1, we divided that in half, it should be a 1/4 inch drop in the middle to make that where it needs to be. So we are going to take a 1/4 inch off of it. I was really proud of my cut. I think I made a perfectly flat cut, but hey, it's a good practice cut. And now we can make it 5 inches, which will help us also know exactly how tall to make the other stringers when we get into that stuff. So luckily we have enough extra material that we can make them all a tiny bit big. We can shave them all down if we have to, which I'm going to try not to do that. The rest of the boat's relatively symmetrical, so once we get the center one figured out, we'll know that this will be the same as this, and this will be the same as this, and all that's all good. So let's go ahead and cut this back down. Get it back in here. Well, that's perfect. My knee. Hurting my knee. We like it. Just wear my mask. I was too lazy. I had my hands too full to take it off. But now it's off. We like our new 5-inch tall stringer there. And the way I have my sheets mapped out, I'm going to cut the 8-foot sections of all these first, and then I'll go through, and I want to say it's on a separate sheet that I need to make my shorter pieces for the very front or the very back. I'll probably make the longer pieces go to the front, and then I'll put a curve on the bottom side of that piece that matches the shape of the hole in the front up there, which that will bring our joint of the front and rear section of stringer more towards the rear, which is more where I would want more stringers anyway. So I have enough material, I can double these up towards the rear, how I did on the last one, so I have more stringer back here. And the joints are in the rear, the weight's in the rear, all that stuff. But when I say weight, I do want to just go ahead and mention, when you research, you'll see that the Coosa is lighter than wood, and when you're handling it, it's quite a bit lighter than wood. I'm pretty excited about how light that's going to be. So, okay, Need to measure and figure out my curve of my front of this. It's probably going to be kind of fun, but we love having fun, so we're going to go ahead and start doing that. We couldn't get the old one out in one piece. It was liquid wood. You kind of had to just sort of chisel it out, but we can figure all that out, and I'm sure y'all will too. Nothing but measuring and cutting. It's nothing too complicated. Front 24 inches of this need to slope up to 2 inches. Front 24 to 2 inches. Okay, we can do that. We're going to slope the front 24 inches of this up to 2 inches and reinstall and measure. The bottom side of this, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to have a little bit of space. You want it as perfect as you can get, but you're going to bed it. You're going to put in. You're going to seal it to the floor and fiberglass it in and all that stuff. It doesn't matter, but it's not going to be touching the bottom anyway. It's going to have some bedding between there. I think we like it. I have this poor boat apart a little longer than I wanted. I might need to make sure I've got weight under it right here. Weight under it. Make sure I have the boat resting right here on the trailer. There's a little bit of more of an air gap here than what there is up there, and I can press it out. So I am going to finagle on that a tiny bit. This side looks good. Oh yeah. If we could have a jig for every single boat you do, or any of the boats you do, would help this process. Yeah, my support of the boat is right up here, so I'm going to need to. I can figure something out. A padded floor jack, something. Shimming up the boat. Try from right across there. I noticed a slight movement there. Might take a little bit for it to sag anyway. Might be a little bit of jigging going on in here. In the past, when I've done this the wrong way, I've kept the sides of the fiberglass stringers intact to where you can mash your stringer in and mash the bottom of the boat up and run screws through it and then glass it in. But this time I was just really determined not to use screws. You could go with stainless, they'd probably last forever. But I just really didn't want to do that. So I think I am gonna just make this wiggle and work. And now we need to get to our next stringers in line. We're going to tape measure lengthwise how we're going to put those in there. I might be lucky, and that's 8 feet. Looks like it could be. Let's just see how lucky we can be. Oh. I have just been a nervous wreck about cutting these pieces out. With wood, I get nervous about wasting wood, but I mean, if you mess it up, you just go order some more or go down to the store and get some more, depending on how rare it is. This material just has me hypersensitive Not only is it expensive, but it's hard to get. The shipping's what really gets me going. I bet these are going to be perfect at 8 foot. Yep, I think they are. 8 foot and 5 inches. But I can probably improvise that. Well, yeah, 8 foot 6 inches, which would make it real weird to not just use an 8 foot piece. And I can probably just use fiberglass at the end. Just have my 1708 run 6 inches longer and make its own stringer there towards the end. I think we like that. And if you don't like it, don't do that on your boat. I think I'm going to on mine. And so that will be 8 feet, because that's as long as the sheet. 8 feet sheet, which we have determined how tall those need to be, which I believe it was 2 inches. So we can go ahead and measure out our next 4, really, because if we have this and we like it, we can say, and those have gotten skinnier. 1.5 inches. Those will be 1.25 inches. 1.25 inches. And these that otherwise didn't exist will be 3 3/4. 3 3/4. 1.25 inches. I'll do a straight taper, 1.5 to 2 inches, and then I'll notch this back section down. It's 1/2 inch or so for this lower area for the fuel tanks and the battery. Okay. So a 4-inch piece, 3.5 inch piece that I can cut diagonally, and then I'll have 2 stringers that end at 2 and 1.5 inches. Here we go. Here are our beautifully tapered stringers. 1.5 inches in the front, 2 inches in the back. Which way do I want to have on top? Maybe like that. But I like it. It's right where I want it to be. Now I can go get that tape measure I keep taking out of here. So I have 2 over there and none over here. And I can measure up the even number jobs here that the boat never had originally. Man, I just feel like this boat seemed so flimsy. It needs them. So it's going to get them. We're going to build this whole big stringer assembly as a big old jig. And then we're going to take it apart, put 5200 underneath them, put it back together, let it set up all square, and then start glassing this in. And then we can do the floor piece, and the transom piece, and the knees, and all this great stuff. At a minimum, this one will need to end up being 35.5 inches wide, or 35.5 inches long. And these others will need to have a sandwich effect. I'm going to make them as long as I can, really. Hey, barn swallow. Now I've got 35.5. from there to there. That's where that sits, exactly 35.5. Map this out. 35.5 at the top, 34 and 34.25 at the bottom.
Look at that. That's what I wanted. That's what I got.
Oh, hello there. I'm glad you're still here with us. If you've been following along, we've been ripping and roaring on time lapse, getting all these pieces cut and fit. Now I think it's time for us to remove all this, wipe all these surfaces down real good, and apply some 3M 5200 to glue all these down with, so we can have time for that stuff to cure, so we can start glassing these pieces in. Okay, before we start using our 3M 5200 to glue these stringers down, I'm going to clean up what's down here with some paint thinner. All the sealing surfaces, and I might try to excessively wipe where we're going to glass too, just to waste some more thinner. Why not? Let me tell you how I came into the idea of using 5200. I was going to reseal the engine to the back of my boat, my other boat. So I went on the Jungle website, as they call it, and I found some stuff called marine adhesive sealant, and I just hit buy immediately. That's about how that went. And then I started researching that was not the right stuff to use. You needed to use 4200. On surfaces you don't want to have permanently stuck together. So then I ordered some of that stuff. And that's what I used. So if you find yourself in that situation and chose to find a way to use it later, and I did a little research and learned you can use that to bed in your stringers. So that's where we are now. Well, there's still some foam in there. Did a terrible job up to this point getting it all clean. And this stuff's very fuely smelling. Seems like it'll leave an oily residue. I sure hope not. That's nice and slick where it's thin. So yeah, we'll just wipe all this stuff out with some thinner. Really shows how ugly the bottom of this boat is here. As much as I hate to say this, you're not going to see it anyway. I'm trying not to be that way about this project. I really want it to be good and to be right. I don't want it to be done lazily. I don't want to take shortcuts. I really, really don't. But you can't waste your life away prepping all this stuff to make it beautiful, because that's not necessarily what's going to make it work anyway. And man, I hope this is the right stuff to use, because we're going in with it. It smells like gas. Maybe this is actually gasoline, just in a thinner container. Dual purpose. Run the boat on it if there's any left. The Glastron from the factory used some kind of a foam, I noticed, down below the stringers. I guess that would probably work too. I've never actually bedded stringers in before. I just put wood down, put cheap wood down that didn't last very long, and glassed it in, and it performed great until the cheap materials rotted. So now we're coming back with expensive materials that we're going to hope never rot. I thought about using acetone when I bought this stuff, and I went with this instead. This stuff always seems so oily. But it's drying, so maybe it's not. The only places I really need to scrub at the moment are just right here in line with these stringers. It's hard to tell how dirty that was until you get it wet with something, then it really shows. In a way, so many of these steps, you could probably get away skipping a few, but if you do all of them, they all kind of work together as insurance for the other steps. But good prep and adhesion is always important on stuff like this. And not to knock this jug over. I'm focusing on that pretty hard right now. Make sure I get the lid on. Get it out of the way, not knocked over. me complaining about it drying fast, and then looking down, it's or not drying, seeming greasy, and then I look down and it's dry. Oh, these are nice. Easy there, fiberglass edge. Don't do that. The center one is what I'm most concerned about. I'm just gonna pour a little in there. Just fill it up. There we go. A little more on my rag here. If we did spill it, at least it'd be in the boat where we could just wipe it all in. Get it real clean. Man, I can't believe all this loose debris in here I'm finding. I really don't want to have to vacuum it again. I have to dig my vacuum out. Be a pain. If you're watching any of this and cringing, because you know more than I do, please try to enjoy it for the entertainment value. If you have something non-insulting to productively help me, I'll take some of that advice. Although, it might be a little bit pointless, because by the time you watch this, this boat will be put together probably. At least this step will be done, and it'll be kind of a waste of your energy. But maybe you can enlighten me one way or another. People seem to like to do that. Makes them feel good. Okay, well, we've got that all wet. I could say clean, but it's not probably. It's just wet. Wet with thinner. Just a tired old boat with a tired old wet floor. Let that dry. We'll come back from the front there with our 5200. Start gluing all this stuff in. Yay! Hopefully this doesn't react poorly with it. It'll be dry. It shouldn't matter. Dust my gloves off right where I just wiped everything down. Need a electric or pneumatic caulk gun. Hopefully I don't use way too much or not enough. Just wiggle and shake. Shake and wiggle. Good old standby here. I'm sure I'll be able to drive the boat and think, man, I can tell I used 5200 to fit those stringers in. I feel like a Cadillac on the water because of it. It just might. It just might. Might have cat-like speed and reflexes. All because of the way the stringers were initially glued in. Stack some dimes there. We're welding her in. Tube's probably empty by now. Certainly making me tired. Uh-oh, some loose debris there. Come on, I guess this surface is extra porous because it's all still wet. I also hear this has a really long cure time, so it's good that it's September. We'll have all winter to wait so we can get these glassed in. Always thinking ahead. I could have cut this off longer, but I could throw thicker bead in there, but then I wouldn't get to enjoy all this squeezing. I wouldn't want that. Uh-oh. Don't touch it. Just let it ride. Just like icing. This is the most expensive stuff I've ever squeezed out of a tube so quickly. Is that the whole can? Nah. It still has some to go. Now we'll turn around and sit in it while we get down here further. Hopefully we don't actually sit in it. Like I said, the cure time, I think on this is several months, so I have a few options as to how I put the pieces back. It doesn't even really matter how I do it because I have so much time. I can do it over again, probably. Just smush it up in there. Smushy style. Just like that. Trying to show you a little bit of work along the way and not just time-lapse stuff. Put it in there so thin, you won't even see it. Still trying not to step in it. I hear that's bad. No, I don't want to spread it everywhere. Actually smushed out a little bit here in the back. So that's exciting. keeping things on the fly, I might double these stringers up after my first layer of glass. I don't really know yet. I'll leave that up to you. Nah, I'll do it. I'll figure something out. Oh, we do need to mash the front of this in further. We're smushing good. Almost done with one tube. I don't think we're halfway done. I'll tell you, I'm more or less doing this just because I bought the stuff. But maybe it'll make it better. Okay, there's that one. Oh, I can feel it on this one. Feels good. We're also gonna go ahead and put this back in. So it'll hold that one in the right spot. Oh yeah. Other side here, starboard side. So that can sit sitting down kind of in its right spot, not move around everywhere. Oh, I like that. That's nice. That's fancy. Fancy, fancy. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and do this one now. I guess it only comes out as big as the hole in the metal down in there. Maybe it'll come out better now. There we go. It's a big old fat bead now. That's the good stuff there. Really make a mess. Try to get it, wedge it up under there like that. That's nice. It's real nice. Now we can kind of guesstimate the length, starting point of these. Which was about an inch further back than those. Perfectly straight lines, that's the most important part. And I'm going to leave that last section until after I've got it in. Pressure's on now, and if I just swipe right through it and make a big mess. That's nice. Put something heavy on top of all this too. It'll really keep it bedding in. It's trying to climb away. Where are you going? Oh, that's what happened. All the stuff's kind of in a bind. I had to move this over. I might not be great at searching this. I might be dead wrong here, but I've heard a few people mention using this, but I haven't watched anyone do it. Seen anybody actually use this stuff to bed their stringers. Just me. Like I said, could be wrong. People may be doing that on the tube. I just haven't seen it. Man, this stuff's thick. Crazy thick. You have to mash it down in there. Now we'll pick up these rear gaps here. Much to my amazement, this has been about exactly, as about exact as you can get anything about exact. About exactly 2 tubes, which is what I bought. I'll use my little hammer here. Okay, then you just stand here for I think 2 weeks, and then it's good to go. So that's all there is to it. Right there, precision. I can go find some heavy things to lay on this. Whoa! Yikes! Perfect. We can take our floor piece, use that as a weighted surface. Precision. Precision bricks. That's sort of heavy. All right, now we just let it sit there. 2 weeks, I think. So I'm not going to be glassing it in before the sun goes down or anything, but that's probably okay. Making some progress. Making progress on the old boat. Well, that wraps up chapter 2. Thanks for coming back to see this part of the project. We're still in the works for a chapter 3. We have to finish this boat, and we appreciate having you along for the ride. Hopefully you're learning maybe something, but I'm mainly focused on inspiring. So if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.